There is a ranch in Nevada, less than 80 miles from Area 51, that was secretly researched by Bob Bigelow's original Skinwalker Ranch team of psychic spies. For decades, while simultaneously researching Skinwalker Ranch, the NIDS team was searching for the lost entrance into a giant cave system of ancient alien artifacts. An abandoned alien mining operation leading to a 500-foot underground pyramid hiding a UFO nicknamed the Mount Wilson Manta Ray. For thousands of years, indigenous people have known and protected its secrets. For decades, top-secret government teams, even before Ronald Reagan's Star Wars program, were scouring the ranch attempting to recover the metamaterials, biological material, and ancient unknown artifacts, and were stopped by an explosion of paranormal activity. Animal mutilations, alien abductions, poltergeist activity, moving orbs of light and shadow figures, strange glitches in time, and the ghost of a Native American shaman appearing along with 3 extraterrestrial beings who protect the land. Now, new leaked whistleblower evidence has confirmed the truth behind these local legends. New ancient artifacts are being discovered, and mysterious energy is transmitting from the meadow, and an undiscovered tunnel entrance has been found. Independent researchers, scientists, archaeologists, and Native American historians have joined me, Carl Crusher, to uncover the truth. We are on a mission to find the lost entrance into the underground and uncover the real mystery of Mount Wilson Ranch.
Focus our energies. The lower meadow and the mine area.
So we've been very focused on the mine area, which is where we saw these potential entrances into the tunnels that we suspected in the area. So with both Mine 1 and Mine 2, we actually turned to blasting. We actually started using shaped charges to blast both mines.
In the middle of a snowstorm.
Well, it's snowing, isn't it?
How did that go?
We could not get deep enough, but with all of our blasting and all of our excavating, Mine 1 looks like it was the older of the 2 mines, potentially the less interesting mine, because it looks like it was naturally filled. Mine 2 gave us a lot of pause, because it looked like it was intentionally filled.
Okay.
And our question became, why would anyone take the time to fill a hole? If it was a non-productive mine,
You would just leave it.
And who filled it in?
Who and why?
Did Bigelow do it? Or was it done 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago?
Right.
now all of this, like I said, is at the mines themselves, but the same land mass actually flows down to something called a lower meadow. And then we took it to the magnetometer, and this is what our magnetometer showed us.
Oh, look at that.
This square area here, this is the lower meadow.
That's clearly artificial. That looks like a phased array.
Sure does.
Looks like a phased array antenna system built under the ground. You see where I'm going with this, Eric?
Mm-hmm.
We've heard rumors that certain low frequencies in that range could be used to not only detect UAPs, but possibly even take them down. But I never knew them to bury them. They were always on the surface.
It's like a low frequency beam or something?
Well, just phased array radar. The rumors that is actually radar that brought down the Roswell thing, assuming it was real. You know, I don't have any evidence one way or the other, but my point is that's just another one of the stories we've heard that kind of fits in the why Bigelow would have been interested.
Right.
But if Bigelow would have found that, he would have stayed.
That's what I thought too.
Unless somebody told him to get to get out.
I mean, it makes me wonder now. I mean, I hadn't thought about it this way. What test did he carry out in the lower meadows specifically, since that's where we got such intensely strange readings?
Right, it's hard for me to believe that he would sell this ranch if he found this type of data.
Yeah.
I'm going. All right, I'm going. This is crazy, you guys. I cannot believe this. Jeff, you just tell him what's going on, and I'll try to pull the screens up or whatever.
Well, I think I drank too much coffee today, so I was sitting in here and thinking about you saying who you didn't know who Tim Ryan was.
Yeah, who the hell is Tim Ryan?
Right. So I jumped into the rabbit hole and I went looking for a little bit more about Tim Ryan. And it went as far as, he's from Sara. and Scientific Applications and Research Associates Incorporated. He's a DARPA man and an Army guy. He does a lot of work with DARPA and Army work. And then I went right down into the patents and things he's done, and one of the patents that he has is for a phased array approach to retrieve gases, liquids, or solids from subaqueous geologic or man-made formations.
The hell? Hey, I gotta pull that one up now. Oh my gosh. Okay. So listen to everything that we have up underneath Mount Wilson Ranch. You've got that big tower up on the hill.
Yeah.
The antenna that we all thought was a Vortac tower or whatever.
Pulsing.
That's pulsing and giving off energy, this resonance, right?
Yeah.
And then on top of that, you've got down in the meadow what we've been scanning that's giving off this pulsing signal. And it's when we scan the ground, it looks like a phased array, like Travis Taylor said on the episode of Beyond Skinwalker. It looks like something that a phased array that you would shoot down UFOs with, like a EMP, right? And this is where it gets crazy, is that he's not wrong, because when we dig through the files on these websites and what Tim Ryan, so Tim Ryan, he's that guy with the curly hair, the chubby guy with the maps and stuff up on the top of the meadow. And he's standing up there in all those photos.
Flipped open with the pages open on his clipboard.
Yeah.
All right.
That guy. So I'll try and pull pictures of him here in a second too.
That he filed August 2nd of 1996, and the patent was patented October 27th of 1998. Oh.
And it's listen to this: phased array approach to retrieve gases, liquids, or solids from subaqueous geological or man-made formations. Patent number 5826653. It's a method of enhancing the remediation of contaminated soils and groundwater, production of oil and gas, production of any solid gas, blah, blah, blah. But it goes on. Basically, it says it's a way of fracking the earth to get different types of liquids, oils, and gases out of the subsurface for using directed energy weapons. And all of his other patents on this other page are about his research and being involved in his patents being used for weather control, EMPs. Where was all that stuff? That was on the other page, huh?
Yeah, that was on the first page I sent you.
I'll pull that one back up.
Anyway, now things make a little bit more sense as to what that array is that was measured in the meadow.
Mm-hmm. In that 7 point whatever range, which is the Schumann frequency. 7.3, it's right here, up to 7.8, which is exactly in Schumann. So between 7 and 8 hertz is the prime spot for remote viewing, positive altered states of consciousness, clairvoyance, clairaudience, you name it, and out-of-body experiences. Okay, so we've got this.
What happened, Brent?
All right.
Oh, the suspense! Okay. The suspense!
So it restarted a few times. The sensor
I saw the sensor failed a few times.
And the intensity.
So we might be sitting with your device right now on top of something that's transmitting a signal?
Possibly. It's as loud in infrasound as if we were sitting at a concert right now. If we were sitting at a Metallica concert, this is what it sounds like right here.
Somebody's done it before.
Someone's done it before, a lot of times. There we go. Getting a little bit of my reflection coming off.
You know, this guy has a patent for an array, and it's phasing and frequency and power, duration and direction of waveforms from these sources to increase and control the intensity of acoustical excitation in the region. And crazy stuff.
Where are you reading that one on that patent?
That's right down in the lower section of the patent through everything that he did there. So it's right down to the bottom of it in the abstract.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
And an array about and spaced apart from the surface at various depths below the surface in a borehole or borehole style well or wells, directing a variable volume of acoustical excitation from the sources.
So yeah, this says
that's his patent. I mean,
and
this is as specific as it goes. That's right when he was standing in that picture.
a method of enhancing the retrieval of recoverable materials, including gas. So it's a phased array. It's a grid like an antenna, and they use acoustics, frequencies, and vibrations. So it's a directed energy weapon. It says generating, listen to this, the method of claim 1, and this is all said that it's for separating contaminated water, oil, and mineral solutions and natural gas. So if they go to where the soil is like a mixed slough of oil and all kinds of stuff down in an aquifer where you can't really, normally it's not usable oil, right? This is a system of directed energy weapon or frequency vibration that separates the sediment and the oil and the water, and then they stick a pipe down in and they suck out the layer that they want. So it's like a way of fracking using directed energy weapons and waveforms. And this says claim 1, where in the step of directing an acoustical excitation of identical frequencies from said sources into the region of the materials to be recovered, includes the steps of A, generating a linear beam of waveform energy from said array of sources. And then it says B, directing said linear beams toward the region within the earth where the material to be recovered reside. And 3, sweeping the beams back and forth from one side of the region to the other so that said linear beams intersect with the region to create areas of desired acoustical excitation. So they're shooting energy beams into the earth to vibrate up the oil for oil drilling.
Or, no, not just oil. It says whatever material they're trying to extract.
But what is everywhere when you're walking around Skinwalker Ranch, Chris? What is everywhere around there? That whole area when you look on the horizon and the sound you hear at night.
Oh, it's all oil rig everywhere.
Everywhere.
Everywhere. The whole place is surrounded in oil refineries.
It's all oil refineries. So maybe it was an experimental thing where they were trying to do separate it for gold or other minerals or materials at your property.
Why is it still pulsing now?
So that's the other thing, is that the other usage of it besides recovering minerals and materials is that they would point these things to control the weather, or they cause earthquakes, or it even says that they, all of Hal Puthoff's research and stuff is how they cross the beams in the sky to fake UFOs and orbs of light. And also do EMPs to shoot stuff down. It's a sonic energy broadcast system. It says right here. It's a directed energy weapon. So do you know what?
The drone's crashing.
Making the drone crash and think that it's flying over Bermuda and everything.
Became so confused that the drone actually ended up fighting itself and crash landing.
That's, no, we've had that happen hundreds of times. It's interesting that it's happening like this somewhere else.
We also were able to do some post-analysis on the GPS anomalies that actually ended up bringing down our drone.
Oh,
cool. That's very
interesting. Yes.
And at first, we thought that we might just dismiss the GPS data as corrupt until we actually looked at it. And then when we actually looked at it to see if does it correlate to anything, the errant GPS data in our drone correlates to this red line and each of these yellow placements that connect the corner of Cuba up to the corner of the Bermuda Triangle.
Wow.
That's where our drone thought it was going.
Well, I mean, we've seen anomalies that were 60-something miles away,
Yes.
but this is 1,000 miles
1,000
away.
miles away.
None of our data points to Cuba.
It's disturbing to me.
Yeah.
We knew we were on the edge of the Nevada test site, and it literally seemed like what happened is that the drone had crossed some sort of barrier. It had hit something that intentionally seemed to misguide it.
And you watched it come down with your eyes?
Absolutely.
What struck me about this is that it's very clean but inaccurate data. It's not garbled.
Yeah.
My training at CIA immediately made me think that this wasn't corrupted data, it was intentionally made errant.
What would we call spoofed?
Yes. This is highly suspicious of spoofing to me, and to what end and why there. I mean, if you're going to spoof something, you don't put something nonsensical into it. You put something in it that's believable, right?
Right.
This means something.
It implies something deliberate.
Yep. Hitting the wall that they made.
And then fast forward, what does ASAP stand for? Advanced Aerospace Weapons System Application.
Why does
what weapons are you talking about?
Why does Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp call their podcast Weaponized? It's like they're throwing it right in everybody's face like they know.
Right.
The whole UFO hearing is probably just to hide the fact that these things, this technology and these directed energy weapons are buried under people's private properties, and they're hiding it, and it's still active and turned on. Like Jeff is sleeping up there. Bigelow sold the property. Bigelow sold the property to Brandon Fugel and doesn't tell anybody. He sells the Mount Wilson Ranch with this phased array radiation equipment, microwave directed energy weapon system built into the meadow, and he doesn't tell Jeff or anybody. And so what?
And then the MRIs from Skinwalker Ranch, that was, obviously there was something else going on there that we were not aware of. You want to say it was because of close proximity to UFOs. I was never, ever in close proximity to a UFO at Skinwalker Ranch. Now, yeah, I encountered some pretty weird stuff, but now it's like, was it real, or was it somehow by outside forces manipulated what my experience is? And I hate to think that, but I always say it's the Native American foundation. That's the truth part out there. But it seems like all these places have that foundation as like a form of a scapegoat. Oh, it's because of the Native American curse is why people are getting hurt, or whatever. It doesn't make any. It's just overlapping layers of a safety net for these guys to hide technology.
So you want to hear Stellar Incorporated? What their role is they create custom solutions to complex problems for the defense and homeland security industry. They specialize in directed and detected wave energy from EMP and ELF to laser light, HPM, which is, I believe, some microwave, and sound. Our technologies harness electromagnetism, plasma, acoustics, electronics, and processing to build practical applications for force security protection, renewable energy, UAVs.
Wait, unmanned aerial vehicles? Did it say UAVs?
It says UAVs.
You gotta be shitting me. It said UAVs.
It says UAVs, small robotics, and special test challenges. In 1991, he received an award from U.S. Army. In 1992, from DARPA, where he was the principal investigator on the projects while he was with Sarah.
They built a DARPA directed energy weapon system under the ranch, and then they sold you the property and didn't tell you that it was there. What the hell, dude? How does Gary Nolan, dude, I'm pulling this up. How does Gary Nolan go on Fox News and all these guys have the gall to go out and act like this stuff is all UFOs as a cover to hide that? So they call it interference syndrome, or they say, oh, it's Havana syndrome. If a UFO flies over, it can give you brain damage. But it's all probably a cover for the fact that they have this stuff buried under civilian properties in the public next to communities. And if they microwave people, they got to be able to blame it on the aliens.
This explains all of the high power lines that come up to this place, why everybody has always expressed such interest and why there's so much power going through here.
Mm-hmm. It's just like, it's a typical CIA op. With the Gary Nolan thing, Tucker Carlson stated on a Full Send podcast that Gary Nolan, those people, he said them, reached out to Fox News. Why would Gary Nolan reach out to Fox News? Why would the CIA, because that's who pushed all this stuff on Gary Nolan to begin with, was Kit Green and Hal Puthoff and these guys that pushed this interference syndrome on Gary Nolan. Gary Nolan probably doesn't even know half the story. They just played him like a puppet.
And Colonel Alexander.
And they put him on Fox News. It's just ridiculous. It's so plain for people to see.
Army man, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, he's involved in all this stuff, you know. I mean, in 2016, he got if you go to his website right now and look, he received an award in Brazil for non-lethal weapons development in Brazil in 2016, the same month and year when Bigelow sold the property to Brennan Fugel. It's like April 2016.
So Timothy Ryan also received a nice $50,000 grant award for his work in electromagnetic interference, electromagnetic pulse, and high power microwave.
Wow. But it makes sense because now if you look at NIDS, like I've been saying for a long time, NIDS were the first test subjects on Skinwalker Ranch. You got a group of scientists out there claiming to see stuff, and there's a possibility that technology was used on them to have these experiences. Well, of course, they're never going to admit that because it would damage their credibility. But even like Eric Davis, you know, he's publicly stated that he saw a creature come out of a portal and provided zero evidence about that experience. Like, you can't be a scientist, respected scientist in the scientific community and make claims like that with no evidence. And that's how you never get to work in a real organization like the Department of Energy or the DOD, like at Groom Lake. You just become an outside scientist that, yeah, I'm not down that Eric Davis had an experience, but you need to back it up. But there's a possibility these guys were used.
I'm sure they were.
Yeah, they were used, and then we were used out there as well. That's 100% true.
Yep. And I'm feeling, all of a sudden, I have a hot feeling in my body today after reading this stuff. Yeah, it changes things up a little bit.
So what's the deal now? Because I mean, how do we remedy the fact, Chris, that you walked around for over 6 years with this technology pumping up through you and all of your friends, causing you potential Havana syndrome and brain damage or schizophrenia or whatever, and they're blaming it on UFOs and the paranormal and all this stuff when really they're testing out their cloaking devices and directed energy weapons. Look at all this. They're like trying to make crazy stuff like MK Ultra type stuff, right?
Right.
On top of it all, fake UFO appearances and all of it, but really they're doing it all to try and cover the fact that they have buried phased arrays underneath private property and they're selling the land off to people and blaming it on UFOs. So why is Jay Stratton and Travis Taylor and these guys going and working at these spots to fill in the gaps and to cover the story as like the officials coming out of the government? Because they probably know that this technology is buried there so they can steer around it.
Yeah, I mean, they're controlling the narrative, obviously. Yep. And it's plain as anybody can see it if they just start connecting the dots. It's insane to me. It's like the bottom line is with my MRI is they only had one done. So I had an MRI done in 2011. And when I asked about why, they said, we want to see if there's any changes in your brain pattern that allowed you to have an experience on the ranch. And I thought to myself, hey, that's cool. But they never did a follow-up MRI. So how can they judge a change in my brain if I only do one MRI? It's because they were specifically looking for damage and didn't tell me about it, which is completely unethical. It's totally illegal and unethical. You can't take an employee and say, hey, go get an MRI done, and then not tell you the results of it. For one, I never got the results of my MRI until I personally got my copy in like 10 years later, and then find out that your MRI data is attached to some PowerPoint presentation that's been passed around everywhere. It's like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
It's so ridiculous. It's just like, but people want to believe it's all aliens and UFOs, and Jesus, yeah, I do too. But it's hard for me to go down that narrative when I've been involved in the places where my professional background was in the DOE, Groom Lake, Air Force. I've been around special access programs and where technology is tested and development, and all these other guys who are on these pedestals talking for years have never worked there, so they're just on the outside looking in. And they believe it's all aliens, and everybody else believes it is. But it could be an all cover for all this technology. Because why would the government waste $22 million on a program called OSAP, Weapons System Application Program, weapons, and then they have nothing to show for it? It's like a waste of money. All they have is like a 38-page report and some MRIs. It's so ridiculous.
So do you think this 30-page report is still part of the psyop to make it sound like it's contact with the phenomenon, when really it's like
I mean,
it's a veiled way of reporting on their study.
Yeah. It's either two things. It's either a document that was made up by the CIA, Kit Green, in hopes to get a second contract with OSAP, and it's all a hustle, or it's a real document, and everything in that document is real, which means that they legit use military veterans on Skinwalker Ranch as a guinea pig, and other people too involved with Skinwalker Ranch. It didn't tell them that they're part of this interference syndrome. Not one time in my whole 8 years working at Bigelow was I ever told about interference syndrome or that the ranch was a national security threat. That is the biggest load of crap ever. If they would have told us in the beginning, hey guys, we think the ranch is a national security threat, I would have been a little more focused, being a prior veteran, being a military, and being just a professional in my background, to have a little more insight, to take better data readings than just like sleeping on top of the mesa at night with the dogs and trying to connect to the property on a spiritual level. But that was never issued. And then you have Jay Stratton coming out, who, by the way, spent one day on Skinwalker Ranch, and now he's walking around like he's the expert. And he's being referred to on the TV show as an investigator for Skinwalker Ranch. He didn't investigate a single thing on that property. The investigations were done by me and the other guys who were out there. We were the ones who did it. We were the ones who did the investigations. We were the ones who did the experiments. We were the ones who pushed out into the night alone trying to collect data. There was nobody else around but us.
Guinea pigs.
So, yeah, 100% guinea pigs. There's no other way to even look at it. There's no way, and that would explain what Travis Taylor said to me in 2019. It makes me sick to my stomach.
And he's in a rock band with Jay Stratton, and of all the places, okay, when you go to the Navy's FOIA releases where the Tic Tac UFO, the gimbal, the Go Fast footage, all of that got released out of the Pentagon. That was all done because the emails along right in there say Jay Stratton's name. And then of all the places he goes, when this stuff starts to come out about the UFO hearing, he plants his butt right back at Skinwalker Ranch. Why? Yeah. Because this technology is still going on there. So does this, dude, so if they're, okay, so let's talk about the technology for a second, because Jeff, what you were reading in there and what we read, it sounds like they can point this stuff down into the ground to do everything from frack for oil or separate minerals and liquids underground to cause earthquakes. It said they can do weather manipulation, lightning, right?
We can get right down into our whole idea of the whole metamaterial thing that we were, told to find. Maybe they extracted metamaterials from down below something,
Yeah.
Because right along the same FOIA request with Jay Stratton is all this room temperature semiconductor research that's just come out, which is like anti-gravity technology, and this is crazy, dude.
Yeah.
So wait, so Tim Ryan comes with Hal Puthoff and Bigelow to Mount Wilson Ranch, and Bigelow buys Mount Wilson and then buys Skinwalker, and then but then Tim Ryan and Hal Puthoff and all those guys, under the guise of remote viewing and UFOs and studying the paranormal, they put in these directed energy phased array systems that can function everything from an EMP to a weather manipulator. And then it says that they can cross the energy to form balls of plasma and basically fake UFOs.
There's the lights that we see in the sky.
Yeah.
Oh, here it is. Some more, more topics of his. Array signal processing. Atmospheric electricity. No, I'm on to another page where it says that his affiliation is Northrop Grumman.
Oh.
Even better, which is right down the street.
Right? Electromagnetic shielding, HF antennas, UHF antennas, VHF antennas, array signal processing, atmospheric electricity, atmospheric techniques, clouds, geophysical techniques, geophysics computing, meteorology, parameter estimation, radio frequency interference. This is the one I was curious of. Stochastic processes. I don't know what that means. Maybe we should look that one up. Thunderstorms and transfer functions. Yeah, he's an interesting guy.
Okay.
Yeah, Northrop Grumman. There he is.
There it is.
Oh, there he is. Swept CW testing of shielded systems. So he's got a lot of.
So if this is what the technology was all about, oh my gosh. Okay, so
And look, he's been involved with Bigelow this whole time, but you've never heard about him because he's been behind the scenes developing the technology which produced people's experiences. And then you have guys like Colin and Eric who've been the voices saying, "No, we've seen all this weird stuff."
Filing patents on what he's finding and making. Wow.
he has an article on here in 1994. Dr. Tim Ryan published a paper entitled Experimental Investigation of an Electromagnetic Gravitational Interaction, and it's called the Electric Spacecraft Journal.
That's the journal we're gonna get.
So yeah, Jeff and I just bought all of these.
Okay, so who holds a BS, an MS, and a PhD in physics is the CEO and co-founder of a small high technology firm in California. This is back then in what, 94?
Talking about
He
Dr.
has
Tim Ryan.
22 years of professional experience. Most of his technical activities have involved theoretical, experimental, and applied electromagnetics, ranging from high energy electrodynamics to the study of nuclear electromagnetic pulse phenomena and systems engineering. So,
EMPs, phased arrays, directed energy
this is
weapon
all about
systems.
them. Electric propulsion studies.
So what do you think about, like, when people go back and watch the intro to this video where it talks about all the stuff buried here, and then they see Travis Taylor at Skinwalker Ranch, see what's buried down in the meadow right on camera that we didn't film. History Channel came here and they discovered with their drones, with their independent ground penetrating radar. Travis Taylor, a scientist
like a phased array.
multiple PhDs, calls it a phased array system, like a radar.
Man-made.
Yeah, and then open this. Look at this.
Mm.
Look at the pictures of what is this? Turn the.
It's just,
Imagine this was a small version.
there's just too much to it. I mean,
There's so much, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Look at the pictures.
this is a
I mean, imagine if there's something like this
implemented
underground, but large, like a grid, like almost like the HARP array up in Alaska or something, but a smaller version.
over top of something.
Or maybe tied into the tower, what everybody thinks is a Vortex tower. It's maybe something else and goes clear up through the mountain. Dude, you've got a weird mystery on your hands here, Jeff.
Yeah, you aren't kidding.
What the hell is Dr. Tim Ryan doing up here? What is he doing up here 2 years later with all that money with Jacques Vallée? Hal Puthoff, if you haven't looked into this guy, he's the one with Tom DeLonge right now claiming he's got metamaterials that they're talking about in front of Congress. He's the guy that has that material. Where did they get the material?
How about the patents with metamaterials?
Yeah, that's a whole other one,
That's
right?
a whole other one.
Where did they get the metamaterials? Was it here? I mean, here they are. Here or Skinwalker Ranch or where? I don't know.
We do have their drill course, so we're going to find out.
Yeah, we may have found an entrance. So off we go down the rabbit hole.
Or could it be manipulated purposely by people who have the technology to simulate UFO sightings? And people say, well, of course not. Who would do a thing like that? Well, I would remind you that during the Watergate investigation, it was discovered that there was a plan originated in the White House to surface a submarine off the coast of Cuba and paint the second coming of Christ over the island of Cuba using holograms. Which is well within our technology today. The idea was that since there is a large Catholic population in Cuba, they would be so upset by this vision that this would saturate the communication channels, the telephone system in Cuba, long enough for an invasion to take place.
How interesting. I never heard of that.
Well, I think that's a classic in psychological warfare, but that kind of manipulation is well understood, and I have personally investigated several apparently genuine UFO cases where there was in fact a manipulation. My conclusion, the conclusion of scientists working with me, was that there was in fact a manipulation taking place, and that it was not a hoax on the part of the witnesses, but a hoax on the part of somebody much better organized than
So there are possibly all of these levels going on simultaneously.
Today, with the current technology, that would be possible.
But no, I mean, we were working, in a collegial setting, and it was like tried this and whatnot. We use him as, I think, a really remarkable example. Another one we put on a UFO and was able to report like he had been abducted. In this case where he had not been, but sightings were another one we put on a UFO and was able to report like he had been abducted. In this case where he had not been, but UFO sightings were popular at the time, particularly abduction scenarios. So that was one where, again, changing history could cause a new scenario and be able to describe the situation just as if it were real.
Was that an experiment, or was there a practical use for that?
No, that was, I hate to say experiment. A lot of this was, I mean, it wasn't consciously what we set up to do. It was more serendipitous. Here's the events. Who are we working with? What can we do? Who wants to, we were literally making it up as we went along.
Thanks. I wanted to ask this question. I thought it was interesting from one of my patrons. And so he wanted to ask for any specifics, if you could possibly give, regarding Colonel Alexander and his sidekicks using tech to scare the Shermans off Skinwalker Ranch. That was so Bigelow could purchase it. And he was quite interested in that.
Well, look, I mean, if anyone who drills down on this subject and gets a little bit deep into it will realize that there are electromagnetic weapons and technologies that were developed in the late 40s and 50s that can simulate almost anything. And we're not talking holograms. So what often has happened is that you have the real extraterrestrial phenomenon, and then you also have something called interdimensional phenomenon that's not extraterrestrial. And then you have a covert group that have these sort of electromagnetic technologies that can simulate the other two, both extraterrestrial and interdimensional. So everyone is always fighting the last war. They're thinking that, most people think that the state of the art of technology is the thermonuclear weapon and some bioweapons and things like this. But when you look at trillions of dollars going into clandestine projects over the last 75 years, dealing specifically with this some would call esoteric, but very detailed area of physics known as transdimensional physics, very high voltage electromagnetic systems, you get some substantial breakthroughs. So as you know, if you've read the disclosure book, we had a witness who was at a Canadian air base in 1953, where they were able to, this is rather banal, but they were able to teleport from one side of the base to the other, an ashtray, and back and forth under controlled circumstances. And we have multiple people who've been in facilities, corporate and governmental, where those sort of technologies exist. Now, there's a funny name for this at the CIA. It's WSFM, Weird Science and Frickin' Magic. But those sort of technologies can be deployed, as they were at the Skinwalker Ranch, to scare someone off or create all kinds of phenomenon. And then the question becomes, what part of the phenomenon that was going on there was, let's call it, endogenous or indigenous or naturally occurring there? And then what part of it ended up being changed by these sort of very, very advanced weapon systems and very advanced electromagnetic systems? And so this is generally called stagecraft, where you can stage a number of things.